Yeah, today is all about that little fella right there, the CZ P10S. Now, I have owned the CZ P10C and the CZ P10F for about 2 years now. And I have to say they are probably two of the, just hands down out of the box, better striker fired pistols out there for sale today. Some people may disagree with me, and that's totally fine, but having experience with those, I definitely wanted to get my hands on the P10S, but I just couldn't find one for sale around me. Luckily, a buddy of mine, Esco, is a California refugee, and he seems to be buying everything he can because he wasn't allowed to own stuff out there that he can out here in Arizona. And if you are a refugee from a non-2A state, let me know in the comments down below. But having that positive experience with the P10F and the P10C, I definitely wanted to get my hands on that P10S. And the fact that he'd already put several hundred rounds through it means I didn't have to spend a whole ton of my own ammo really testing this thing out there because it's already got a good amount of rounds through it. Now, before we get into all the specs on that and look at it up close, let's talk about something that probably all of us need, myself included, and that's going to be the sponsor of today's video, which is USCCA. The U.S. Concealed Carry Association helps responsible Americans like you prepare for what happens before, during, and after an act of lawful self-defense. USCCA members get life-saving education, expert training, plus self-defense liability insurance. Plus, a USCCA membership is always risk-free with their 100% money-back bulletproof guarantee. Membership is truly an investment worth exploring. Click the link in the description to learn more. I've actually been a member of USCCA since last year and actually went through their instructor program as well just to kind of see what their take was and what they were doing with their instructor program. You need some form of protection. You are going to need help and you are going to need legal advice and legal help immediately when it comes to self-protection. And they offer not only training, but they offer that legal service as well. So it's definitely something to look into. I will leave a link down below for that. Well, now that all that good stuff is out of the way, let's go ahead and check out this P10S up close, go over the specs, and of course, I will show you how the trigger in here works. If you don't know how the CZ P10 series of triggers work, it's actually kind of cool, and it seems to be a lot of you guys like understanding how the mechanics and stuff in here work, which is pretty much the same thing I like. So make sure you guys, if you're getting anything out of this, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn those bell notification icons on. We're gonna go ahead and get into the P10S right now. All right, we're gonna jump right into the P10S here from CZ. Start off like we always do. Gonna go ahead and read those specs right off the website because who wants to go search Google on their own, right? So polymer striker fired, we know it's that reinforced polymer frame on here, as you can see. It is a 12+1 capacity. If you live in a free state, you'll get two 12-round magazines. This is 9mm striker fired, obviously. You do get a nice tritium front night sight on there, and that is just a darked out rear, which is actually nice. That's my preferred kind of sight setup these days. 3.5-inch barrel. Total width on this thing, 1.26. A weight of 24.4 and an overall length of 6.6 inches. So it's a little girthy. It is a little heavy, and before we go any further, I just want to show you the difference between that and this is a Glock 19 right here, Gen 4, and just kind of show you guys the size difference between the two. Just go backplate to backplate. You can see the P10S is a little shorter, not by a whole lot, but then even though the Glock 19 has a mag well on it, they're really similar in size. So kind of gives you a good idea between the CZ, which is the subcompact, and a Glock 19, which is the compact. The CZs run a little bit large. Well, let's go ahead and just talk about this thing overall and take a good look around her from magwell to muzzle like we always do. So you do get your interchangeable back straps. That's the medium one that's on here. That contour seems to just be what my big old hands like. Okay, that's my hand and that CZ, but for some odd reason, I like the little slimmer on here. I don't know why. The texturing on the CZ, it's really good. A little thicker, not as much of it as some other manufacturers, but it is very nice. A lot to grab onto right now. Working your way up, you do have a reversible magazine release. You got some kind of those depressions right in there where your palm kind of sinks into and your trigger finger will sink into right along there. They've done a nice job. You got that ambi slide lock right there, or excuse me, slide stop, slide release right there. Nice knurling job on the mag release right there. They've done a good job on that. Coming forward, you do have some of that texturing following up right here as a reference point for your thumb. You can see you've got a roll pin design, not a solid pin for the most part. Your takedown lever right there. A single slot pick rail right there, which fits, most of the main size 1913 lights out there, although it's a little bit short here to get most lights on. You're gonna have to find one for a, subcompact on there. Going back up from there, you're gonna have rear serrations, you're gonna have front serrations on it. CZ markings, you can see it is nicely chamfer cut down right there if you're one of those people into press checking from the top or from the bottom. You do have, like I said, the sights are blacked out on the rear. Standard looking backplate right there, which is very common with all striker fired setups. Long extractor, just like the M&Ps. Standard looking barrel across the hood, which is wearing about the same as all the rest of the CZs that I know. They seem to wear right there in the corners a little bit faster than just all the way across the top. Just seems to be a CZ thing. Now, let's get down to the down and dirty about the Optics plates. You have to buy the plates on your own, okay? They do not come with it. Buy the C&H Precision ones. They're a little bit better than the factory ones, and they've got a better thread depth system on them. Those are just the ones that I go with. Now, let's go ahead, do some trigger pulls right now instead of wait until the end, and then we'll talk about how the trigger actually works. So we'll go ahead and clear that out, give you guys a good idea here what we're working with on that trigger. So the safety blade on there does not go 100% sub flush, but it gets very, very close, very minimal poke out on that trigger shoe safety. So very positive engagement. Take up is not bad, and then you hit a nice defined hard wall and then a break. Almost zero creep. Okay, let's do the reset here. Not bad, and then that wall, and I'll try to go as slow as I can to show you just how minimal the creep is here. So right there, it is not bad at all. It's very crisp on there. So let's do some pulls and see what the weight is at. This gun's got several hundred rounds through it because my buddy shoots it and I borrowed it and put some more through it. So it's well broken at this point. Okay, we're gonna get the first one right there. Is going to give us about 4.5 pounds, which is pretty much what I expected it to be at. These triggers do seem to break in a little bit better than some other striker fired setups out there, a little bit quicker as well too. Okay, so we are almost dead nuts at the same thing, about 4.5 pounds. We'll do one more. As long as I don't mess it up, we should be good to go. All right, so you can see the consistency there on that trigger. It's just solid, solid trigger setup. So let's break it down. Okay, it breaks down just like a Glock does. You go ahead, you make sure that it's clear and safe, pull the trigger, pull it back about 1/8 of an inch, pull down on the takedown levers, pull down on both sides. I had somebody message me saying they couldn't get one of these apart. You have to pull down on both sides of that. So the recoil spring on this thing's a little weird looking. It doesn't have a captured end on there, but that's just kind of how it is. Very standard looking barrel and everything else here except for those lugs. Look at the size of the barrel lugs on that thing. It looks like you could probably hit it with a sledgehammer and they would live through it. The rest of the slide is going to be pretty typical except for how the striker block safety works, and we'll take a good look at that. So it's kind of like the H&K. It's not the little plunger like on a Glock or an M&P. This gets kicked over right here. You can see it moving. That gets kicked over and allows the striker to go forward by the trigger bar as it's working. So instead of going straight down and up, it kicks over to the side and allows that striker to go forward. So talking about how this trigger works, because everything in here, guys, is just very similar to, pretty much every other striker fired thing out there, except it's a little bit of a design on the change on the, slide stop, slide release. It's that whole big chunk of metal that goes around the back right there, and that's what gets kicked up to lock it back when your mag goes empty. And then the trigger bar is also underneath that, follows it all the way around, but still very similar to a ton of striker fired stuff out there in the market. So let's talk about how the trigger actually works. Let me spin this around here. So this little triangular portion right there is what's actually going to do the work on the striker safety that we looked at. So that little edge that gets kicked over to allow the striker to go forward, that's the contact surface that is working with that. So this is your sear surface right here. So as you're pulling the trigger, that whole thing is going to come back Okay, your sear is going to be attached where my tool is. That comes back. This contacts the striker release block. And as you pull back, you'll see that sear surface drops down into the trigger housing group right there. That allows the striker to go forward. So as now that is fired, that slide's going to reciprocate. You're going to see a little button right there on the side, a little nub. So that is going to contact the inside of the slide right here. Excuse me, right on that side, you'll see a little kind of triangular divot right there, and that's going to be on the shooter's left side. What that's going to do is it's going to contact right there, and when I hit this, watch that striker. You'll see it pop up as the slide comes forward. That's what resets your trigger. Just a little thing. I love to see how these things work, and I love to explain it for you guys because you seem to like it. Let's go ahead, talk about, and reassembly, it's just the opposite of that. Let's talk about price. Let's talk about functionality on the range and what my overall feelings are on the P10S and CZ in general. Well, like I said, I have been a fan of the CZ P10 series since I first got my hands on the P10C and that P10F. I take them out to the range regularly, and I just literally think they're one of the better striker-fired pistols right out of the box that there is. Now, this thing right now, even though prices are all over the place, I have seen it out there, even though it's out of stock in a lot of places, right around that $550 mark, which is not bad. However, like we saw up close, you have to buy your own plates, and if you do buy one, I kind of suggest the C&H Precision ones because they really do make some of the better plates out there as far as how they're mounted and thread depth and all that good stuff to really secure this optic to that slide. When it comes down to ergonomics and the trigger, that's what everybody wants to know. So the trigger in the CZ P10C is definitely better than a lot of the striker-fired stuff out there in its stock configuration, especially once you break it in, it gets better. Now, ergonomics-wise, it is definitely a flatter pointing setup than, say, a Glock or something with a much more harsh grip angle in it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do aftermarket stuff to it, like in my CZ P10C. I've got that Overwatch trigger in there, you can see right there. And then in the P10F, I've got the HBI trigger in there, and those kind of achieve a better trigger, but they both achieve it in different ways. If you're interested in any of those, I've got videos on those. I'll leave them linked down below for you. Now, if you're in the market for that subcompact design, even though CZ is known for being a little bit bigger than their counterparts out there for the subcompact, compact, and the full size, they're slightly larger than their counterparts, say Glock or M&P or something like that. I just don't think you can go wrong with this. It is one of the better out-of-the-box striker-fired pistols, in my opinion. But if you can find one, grab it and run as long as you pay for it, because they're tough to find. Like I said, I was looking for one of these for approximately 8 or 9 months, maybe a little more than that. I just couldn't find one in stock locally or even for sale, and I wasn't gonna go on like an online auction site and just get totally ripped off. Make sure you guys check out some of the other videos on the CZ stuff as far as those triggers and everything else. So if you're interested in any of the stuff you saw here today, as far as the optics of the lights, I will leave links for that stuff down below. Make sure you check out USCCA if that is something that you guys are into and looking for, because like I said, haven't been involved in some of those things, you're gonna need some legal defense funds. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a comment down below on what you thought or what you are interested in seeing next time. You guys get out there, enjoy some range time, have some fun, and remember, if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. I will see you guys on the next one.